My name's Wade Watts. My dad picked that name because it sounded like a superhero's alter ego, like Peter Parker or Bruce Banner. But he died when I was a kid, my mom too. And I ended up here, sitting here in my tiny corner of nowhere. There's nowhere left to go. Nowhere. Except the Oasis.
Welcome to the latest episode of the podcast that wouldn't die. I'm your host, Kevin. With me, as always, is Aaron.
Hello, everybody.
Each week, we discuss certain guilty pleasures and forgotten classics from the horror and sci-fi genres with a comedic twist, because that's how we roll. This week, we'll be discussing the science fiction new classic, Ready Player One, starring some people, some
Not
cartoons.
Not Udo Kier.
Not Udo Kier. That's for damn show.
That might have made it better.
It couldn't have hurt, right? Sweet Lord. So what's going on with you, Aaron? What's the latest? I'm putting you on the spot.
I know. I'm leaving for Europe and I haven't packed. All I'm doing is hoarding underwear because I'm going to be gone for like 5 weeks. So I figure if I just buy like 40 pairs of underwear, even if it's like, they sell women's underwear in a bag too, like the men's. So if I just half my suitcase is underwear, then I need never do laundry.
You know, people don't know this, but this is a fact. You can look this up. In Europe, they also wear underwear. Not that difficult.
That happened one time where, it was getting to the point where I might have to go to a laundromat, but then I just popped over to Marks and Spencer and bought 2 more bags of underwear.
That's all you need to do.
Me through.
This is a lovely.
That's what I'm doing. I'm hoarding underwear. It needs to be comfortable. And it needs to be cheap, and I need to have lots of underwear because 5 weeks, nobody wants to figure out how to use a frickin' washing machine in Europe. Because let me tell you, theirs are much more complicated and precise. Ours is hot, cold. Theirs is you dial it a particular temperature, and it's not Fahrenheit, kids. Then you have to adjust the centrifuge because
Shut the hell.
So I spent half a day online trying to figure out how to use this fucking Italian washing machine by trying to figure out what the American equivalent was and holding it and then holding Google Translate. And then once you know, how fast is it supposed to spin? Because you can control that too. Isn't that fascinating? So I find it's better to, wipe the mustard off your shirt, just take it in the shower with you, and just buy lots of underwear.
I don't know what kind of underwear you're wearing, but honestly, it's like you figure hot as hell and crank that centrifuge up to 100%. You know what I mean? It's not going to burst into its.
I was like, "What's on?" There's like 12 buttons. I was used to the old school America where you just crank the dial to hot and push a button. This had like 7 dials and shit. So yeah. Honestly, plus they have bidets there, so maybe I only need 1 pair of underwear.
Enough.
If I use the bidet properly.
That's not using it properly, by the way. Enough.
I'll get away with 1 pair for 6 weeks.
That's okay. This took a dark turn, ladies and gentlemen. I want to apologize to anybody listening.
That's what you get when you throw it to me and I was unprepared.
Clearly. There's always a bird walk into the dark unknown. That's the sad reality. Okay, give us your 30-second synopsis of Ready Player One, please.
All right, so of course I read the book. I listened to the book, and now I'm 3/4 of the way reading the book because I have this habit of being in 12 book clubs and just using audibles, and then I immediately tune out. So reading the book while holding a physical book, you tend to be more focused. So I'm enjoying the book much more. So now This is the first time actually watching the movie, and everyone in book club said the movie stank us. So I'm going to try to give you my 30-second review that is only of the movie, because that's my problem, is the book creeps in. So here it is.
This is like a 30-second preamble to the, yeah, thank you.
Would you like me to sing the preamble to the Constitution? That's a
Normally
little more
not
lively.
sung. Normally not sung, but I appreciate the thought. Why don't we?
I can
Go for
only say it if I sing it. Thank you, Schoolhouse
Interesting.
Rock. So
Okay.
here it is, dystopian future. We've run through our resources. Ain't nobody got a job. They stack up old trailers on top of each other, and that's how people live. And the only thing that's great of their lives is they log into virtual reality. It's like I always said about Star Trek. Why would you ever leave the holodeck? It's kind of like that. It's called the Oasis. So what happens is there's two guys that created the Oasis, kind of like it's like kind of a nod to Jobs and Wozniak. And the one guy dies, the guy who controls it. He has this contest that says if you figure out these riddles, figure out these clues, you win the contest, you win the Oasis. Everybody, you're the richest, most powerful person in the world. So everyone in the world is trying to solve all these riddles, and it's all kind of 80s vibe stuff. And 5 teenagers are the ones that really kind of were the first 5 to solve the first key. And see, I've already slipped into the book. So it's a battle. There's a multinational corporation called the Sixers that want to take it over to win for their own reasons. They want to charge for the Oasis. They want to have levels, and basically it would ruin it. So it's all your D&D people versus the big corporation, and unlike the devil times 5, of course there's a happy ending.
Okay, this is good to know. Now, you said this is the first time you were seeing it, but you've listened to the book and you're reading the book now. Is that correct?
Correcto. And the book, I don't even want to say it. It's just so trite. The book, besides being completely different, is so much better.
Well, okay, I saw the movie in the theater up in the Morro Bay Theater, actually. I think it was like right when it first opened. The one theater, like the one screen theater up in Morro Bay, which is always the way to go.
Where they still put like real butter on the popcorn. It's not real just butter. The orange stuff.
You can't beat it.
What did you think about it?
Okay, well, let me say this. You would think that this movie was built for me, because I am Mr. 80s pop culture.
100%.
Like, they built it. I didn't care for it. I don't think
anybody cared for it, because none of my kids had ever seen it. These kids go to the movie, they see whatever all the time.
Right. I mean, I have to say, I didn't hate it. It wasn't like I stormed out, threw my popcorn in the air, cursing. I just found it disappointing. And what's funny is watching it, like literally the second time for this, I found the 80s pop culture kind of aggressively pandering. You know what I mean? It was almost like it was kind of cynically chosen, to kind of evoke this feeling rather than being kind of a genuine thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much about it, but it was just like weird little Easter eggs, which I should have loved, kind of enraged me, honestly.
Because it was a heavy-handed manipulation in the movie, right?
Yes, but isn't that the same in the book though? I mean, I know there are different references.
I mean, the intro. Oh, there's 10,000 times, because what they did. This is just going to be movie versus book. I can sense it, because I wrote 4 things for the movie.
Right.
So what they did, they completely changed the entire thing. So in this, there's no car races, by the way, in the book.
Right.
It's all
the challenges are different.
Right. All the challenges are different, but they're always like the first challenge it's a puzzle. It's a lines of poetry and you have to figure it out. So like you had to go in, it involves playing these old 80s video games. This one was I think the first key was Joust,
Right.
and it involved a D&D, an old D&D module that happened to be at their
Right.
school. This is beautiful. The one beautiful thing about the book that mapped Coronaville is the schools are all virtual online. They're in the Oasis, and you have to be a good student. Otherwise, the Oasis kicks you out and go back to shitty public school. And the one thing they mention why the main character loves going to school at the Oasis, because you can just mute all the rowdy kids. So there's no
That's what it was
distraction.
like in the real deal. I mean, let's
know.
be honest.
It was like
As a
it was-
teacher,
absolutely. And I remember reading that. I was like, you're predicting the future, friend.
absolutely.
But it was 1,000 times more 80s, but it's even more archaic. I always thought that the book would really be more kind of a guy kind of a thing, because it is deep Atari, it's Pitfall references.
Right. That's
is,
before my time.
right.
Almost.
I mean, this would be like my time and up. Like one of the gates was he had to word for word counteract
from war games or something.
from war games.
Right.
And then there's a lot of musical references, from the poet Howard Jones.
I love Howard Jones.
I know.
That's what I'm saying. Where it's like, basically, I'm reading up on this. There were a couple things when they made the transition from the page to the screen. Number one, they felt that there were sequences that were in the book that really don't lend themselves cinematically. You know what I mean? There's like playing Pac-Man or whatever.
Right.
So there's things like that. So they're like, okay, we got to get rid of those and replace them. And then they're kind of like, and the rights to all these different things were not always easy to come by. So they had to trade out. Like there's a Blade Runner thing that is supposed to occur in the book, but Blade Runner 2049 or whatever the movie was called was coming out like soon after, so they didn't want to give the rights to potentially damage the brand before their sequel came out.
No, I think
so they had to make those changes.
Damage the brand. So, but
wah wah wah.
And then you told me Spielberg didn't want to use any of his shit. I mean, that's the 80s.
Right. Yes, Spielberg directed this, and he was like, I don't want to be too self-referential. They talked about how when he did 1941, there were jokes in it that were kind of lampooning Jaws and Close Encounters, and he got criticized for it at the time. I bet you he got criticized because the movie's crappy. Wasn't those specific references?
1941 and saw it in the theater just the same.
Oh, gee, okay. This podcast is over.
Treat Williams was a treat. I'm just gonna tell you. But
you got Treat Williams. You got who else?
John Belushi,
John Candy, John Belushi. You got, Ned Beatty.
Now let me just say Ned Beatty, but as long as he's not
Tim Matheson,
as long as it's not a Deliverance Ned Beatty, we're all good with Ned Beatty.
That's true. Nancy Allen, the patron saint of this podcast. It's an all-star cast, now, just not very funny.
I just want to say that I love that movie, but like Highlander, I have not seen it since.
I have seen it since.
It's just not holding up. I mean, they changed all the character. IROC was just another one of the kids. I mean, I get it. So you know what you do? If you can't adapt it, at least don't ruin it. There's no fucking car races. And then they didn't even give Parzival. He won the first key. He's the one who figured it out. And they made it sound like somebody else did it, and then it was this car race where he had to go backwards or something. I liked it where he had to think about the different 80s references, go back to the dude's old and found an Activision game. I mean, it was going deep.
It was well, and that's basically their attitude. And the writer of the book was involved in the making of the movie.
That's
I mean,
too bad.
it wasn't like they took it from him. And he fully acknowledges he's just like, look, I knew the rights issues were going to be a problem, and I knew some things cinematically weren't going to work. So he kind of blessed them with the idea of, yeah, as long as we have other pop culture references from back in the day, good enough.
The music
Good
was
enough.
all wrong. They went with like like a heavy metal thing versus it was more of like I felt it was more of like a new wave British kind of pop kind of sound.
The three songs that I remember, we're just
We're
jumping
not
right in.
gonna take it.
Yes, that was
Bullshit.
one. That was one. Twisted Sister.
Yeah.
It starts off with "Jump" by Van Halen, and the closing credits was "You Make My Dreams Come True" by Hall & Oates.
Well, I love the Hall & Oates, but no.
As do I.
My vibe for this, where it was much more. These are all American bands, and this was more of a English synth pop goodness.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into the madness. Do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead and start. All I can
First
tell you is the aunt is a chick from my favorite movie, The Secret of Rowan Inish. I recognized the Selkie right away. I was like, "Whoa!"
She's the Selkie.
It's the Selkie from The Secret of Rowan Inish. Come back to me, Jimmy.
Now, here's my question. So the poor people of Columbus, Ohio live in the stacks.
First of all, the book doesn't take place in Columbus, Ohio.
It's Oklahoma City or something, right?
Columbus, Ohio, the reason everybody wants to be there is because that's where the oasis is. So the closer you are to the source, the faster your internet speed.
So, that's interesting.
So they changed that. So later on, when he has all this money, he moves and gets an apartment after he breaks up with Artemis and moves to Columbus and just locks himself into a room to try to win this thing.
So he lives in the stacks, which, as you said, it's basically like this erector set of just stacked, like, mobile homes.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of things.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, is that really much cheaper than building a crappy apartment? I don't know. It just seemed like an unnecessary and bizarre choice.
It just seems like they took a slum because building is building. So basically all they did was take slums and stack slums on top of each other. He was living on top of a washer and dryer in the laundry room at his aunt's. His parents are dead. They're like drug addicts.
Well, they didn't say why his parents were dead. Is that what it is in the book? They died of their drug addicts?
Yeah. And the aunt and the boyfriend just steal stuff. He finds things and fixes computers. That's how he's able to log in. And the school provides his Oasis gear. That's why he always makes sure to go to school so he doesn't have to turn in his Oasis gear.
Well, and they don't talk about that in the movie at all.
No, he doesn't go to school
There's no explanation.
Yeah.
They really don't flesh it out. So what you're telling me in the book, it's the Oasis is all free.
Yes.
And that's why even the people in the stacks can easily access it.
Right. So it's free. It's absolutely free. Of course, you can get better equipment and everything. You're responsible for your gear, but because he's enrolled in high school in the Oasis, he gets that for free. But that's the big controversy because the Sixers, IOI, wants to take charge and start charging people for access and then have like tiered access, and it's not available. I mean, it still costs, if you want to transport to different areas, that costs money. But to just be in the Oasis doesn't cost money.
Now, why are they called the Sixers?
Shit, I can't remember. I know it's IOI, and I can't remember why they're called the Sixers.
I looked this up because I felt like kind of yada-yada'd it in the movie. Essentially, all of the agents who work for IOI, the competing company, their avatars or whatever have 6-digit numbers across their
that's
chest.
right. That's right.
And the first digit is always a 6. Okay. Good to know.
So that means they will never have more than 999,999 employees.
No, not even that many.
No,
because
you're
the
right.
first digit is 6.
699,999. You're right. Brr.
69,999. Anyway, so one thing that I noticed, and a lot of people don't have an issue with this, but like a half an hour into the movie, I realized, oh, I've signed up to watch a cartoon for the next 2 hours.
It's all CGI.
You know what I mean? It's all but it's computer generated animation.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, and the thing about it is it's that creepy uncanny valley kind of animation in a lot of these cases, where it's like the Tom Hanks circa Polar Express
Right.
kind of animation, where you're just like,
Yeah.
what's happening?
They gotta throw a Japanese vibe on it. Otherwise, you will, in fact, end up with the Polar Express, which is more terrifying than the Sixers.
You're telling me. Well, and Artemis in this movie has that kind of Alita battle angel, big old like crazy eyes, which is terrifying to me. It is terrifying. Do not have
Kevin,
these
what is
characters.
your avatar when you were World of Warcraft? You were a chick, weren't you?
It was just with just giant eyes. You
Just
can't hide
giant boobs,
your
giant
giant eyes. That's all you need. No, it look, when it's old school anime and they have large eyes, no problem. The moment they start to make them like, well, they're kind of, human quality, but they still have crazy huge eyes, it's unsettling.
It's like a gecko.
It's
You
unsettling.
expect her tongue to slap up and lick her eye.
Absolutely. It is absolutely, it's a damn iguana.
I notice it here in the future. Once again, everywhere in the future, you have see-through monitors, which we have discussed at length, that being the stupidest idea ever.
Right, because it's the future. And that's how they roll in the future.
Everybody's
They look
stupid in
right
the
through everything.
hell?
Right. People on the other side of the monitor can see what you're doing. So when you get an email, not safe for work, you better not open that email.
I
Because
guess.
somebody walking behind your screen can see everything that you're watching. Not appropriate.
I like to think that if you're on the other side, you just see the back of a page.
One can only hope. Mark Rylance plays what's his name? The dude who runs the Oasis.
Oh,
what's his character? What's the
Sorrento.
character's name?
Sorrento.
No, not the bad guy, the guy who died.
Oh. Shit. Starts with an H.
Halliday?
Halliday.
Halliday. Okay. Here's my question. Somewhere along the lines, I want to say 5 years ago, I had no idea who Mark Rylance was. Had no idea. It sounds like you still don't know who Mark Rylance is.
I don't know who the fuck you're talking about.
Exactly. And then somewhere along the lines, Spielberg was like, I'm putting him in every single one of my movies.
Oh,
He's like the main character of Bridge of Spies.
Never saw it.
He's the main character of the BFG.
No.
He is all over. He was in not a Spielberg
I
movie,
didn't even
but
know
he was
Spielberg
in
was
Dunkirk.
making movies.
Absolutely. He pumps them out like Woody Allen. Every 6
Lord.
months, it's another
Hopefully not just
movie
like
starring
Woody
Mark
Allen.
Rylance. Just like Woody Allen. He was in Dunkirk, where he was the guy. You saw Dunkirk, I'm assuming.
No, I don't watch war movies.
Okay. Anywho, for some reason, I'm speaking to the audience now because Aaron is no help at all. If you know who Mark Rylance is, suddenly he's like Spielberg's muse or something now, where it's like he's in every he's going to find a role. And frankly, I found him to be kind of like a strange choice for the casting. Like he's fine as the old guy, but when they cut back to like where they're designing Oasis, where he's supposed to be youngish and he still looks 75, that's a problem.
That's a problem. When he's young,
I mean,
he was wrinkled and old.
Well, it's like you had Simon Pegg as the young Ogden Morrow or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's right.
And he's fine. And then they kind of aged him up
Yeah.
to be the older Ogden Morrow later in the movie. It's like they did the exact opposite with Mark Rylance.
Well, the problem
Old Mark Rylance.
the problem is
Go ahead.
Simon Pegg is his skin is still fairly smooth. The other guy is as wrinkled as an old testicle. So
Right. Because he is. In real life, he is.
yeah.
Very
They could have
upsetting.
done this thing like they did on The Young and the Restless, the Catherine Transler, where they put a rubber band around the back of her head and elastic and it pulled all the skin back. They could have done something like
Yeah,
that.
I remember.
Although then
Catherine Chancellor
uh-huh.
from Young and the Restless,
Yeah.
the mother of
The guy from LA Law,
Corbin Burnson.
Corbin Burnson.
Very good.
Yeah.
Corbin Burnson. These are important references.
Why aren't they in the book? It's about the same
They should
time.
be.
It's
It should
about
all
the
be
same
Corbin
time.
Burnson.
There was no Young and Restless references at all in this book.
Not it was a missed opportunity to say the least. Sho and Daito are barely characters in this movie.
Yeah, they're barely there at all. H is barely a character. I mean, all these people.
H is much more of a character than the other two, though.
Right. So in the book, there's much more. He was really hanging out. He and H were really good friends. They were always hanging out. But of course, I mean, I'm not crazy. I understand there's much more character development in a novel versus the movie where there is no character development at all.
There wasn't. It was just suddenly there are these other two guys that they hang out with, Sho and Daito. And when we finally meet them in person, we're supposed to be like blown away. Oh, Sho, you're 11 years old. It's like,
who gives
he could have been who gives a? I think they're much larger parts in the book, and that kind of makes sense, but they're barely characters in this.
Right.
In the movie. So, very upsetting. What do you got? I got a bunch. I don't want to rattle off. Go for it. Jump in.
I got nothing. I said there was just some stuff that didn't make sense. So like at one point they're in rigs. They're in these rigs, or they put them in a crazy chair in the movie, but they're in these rigs. But then at other times they're running. Did you see the people with the Oculus helmets on running through the streets at the end? Well,
I wrote that down.
Streets, you would be back at home in your goddamn thing. Otherwise, you're not going anywhere.
Well, and not to mention, you wouldn't be wearing your Oculus helmet on the side of the road where you're just wandering into traffic.
Of course.
You know,
I was like,
playing on the train tracks, falling off cliffs.
They go into all this detail about how they bought all these elaborate rigs with all this haptics and everything, and they wick your sweat away and suck your piss away or whatever the hell.
Oh, damn. I didn't realize that.
And then you just see a bunch of knuckleheads running through the streets with an Oculus. I'm like, okay, so can we just run them over now or what?
They'll thank us. I wrote that down. It was, and I have to say, speaking as somebody who's actually used an Oculus before, look, I'm an old man, okay? Using this Oculus, literally, my kids have an Oculus, and I'm like, ooh, this sounds like fun. Let me pop this in. I was tossing my cookies. It makes you so dizzy using it because it kind of messes up like your inner ears, kind of like what's happening. Your equilibrium's jacked. It messes you up.
Yeah.
Some people it doesn't bother. I guess my kids it doesn't bother. I think because it's old me that I'm like I couldn't do it. I couldn't live in the world of Ready Player One.
Yeah, well,
I'd have to have a vomit bag just underneath me.
Hopefully the technology is better after the world goes to shit if we're still here. So then it makes me wonder how often is our father using the Oculus that you guys got him?
That's an excellent question. We need to check in on that.
I'm gonna be there this weekend. I'm gonna be digging that shit out.
It's like covered in dust.
Exactly.
Just like rotting in the corner with the firewood.
It was donated to the church. I was like, you guys are high as a kite.
It wouldn't shock me. If they could come up with Oculus kind of technology that doesn't make you want to toss your cookies.
Well, that's the problem I had with
Sign me
Star
up.
Tours. Just Star Tours at Disneyland.
Absolutely.
At first, I was like, "This is amazing." As soon as you leave the ship and you kind of dip into space, I was like, "I'm gonna throw up."
Blah.
When is
No, I can't.
When will I be able to get off this ride?
Before I throw up or after? No, we had not season tickets, but a year-round pass to Universal Studios. And Universal Studios California is not as big as Disneyland or Knott's Berry Farm or any of these other places. It's much smaller. So by virtue of that, all of their rides are of that kind of thing, like a Star Tours type of ride.
Right, virtual reality.
Virtual reality, where it's like, the room shakes around and you look through the screen, allegedly, and you see the space or whatever. Becky and I just can't do it. We're about to just yak, and we're like, damn, we paid for a year-long pass, and we can't go on any of the rides without tossing our cookies.
We paid to be subjected to this.
Like torture. We went on the Harry Potter ride. And it was like, now the Harry Potter ride, you do actually go around on a track or whatever, but it's still like that kind of virtual reality that you follow. So it literally is, we went on the ride and we had to like lay down for 10 minutes afterwards just to kind of get our bearings. It was rough. It was rough sledding.
Boy, you're not
Let me tell you.
that. You're not selling that. I haven't been to Universal Studios since I was in high school. I was like, nah, this is enough.
No, thank you. What are the loyalty centers, Aaron?
The loyalty centers are basically, if you've been bad, it's like the re-education centers. You go over there to work off your debts or whatever.
And this is the thing. They kidnap Artemis because she owes a bunch of debt or whatever, and throw her in this cubicle to do the loyalty centers where she's like in the virtual reality world, like planting bombs or whatever. It's like, this is still just computers, right?
It doesn't make any sense.
This isn't a real thing.
Right.
You could just type some code and then that stuff's done, right? Or am I crazy?
That could have been just done by a bot. There's bots to just bid for you on eBay. You don't need a physical human being to put virtual bombs into someplace. It didn't make a lot of sense. I don't know, viewers, listeners, if you're getting a stream here, but we're not super excited about Ready Player One. And I'm not just being a asshole about literature, because for sure, I mean, if we look at like The Shining, I was always book shining, but I am now like solid love the movie. I just treat them as two separate entities. I've had a revelation. Movie Shining is in fact a masterpiece. I'm not saying the book Ready Player One is a masterpiece, but especially if you're a boy or if you grew up in the 80s and you played video games, this is a book for you. I was around video games enough in the 80s. I was not super into it, but it was a fun book. It's a fun book.
And I want to read it. I haven't read it yet.
I'll bring it to you because I have like a whole classroom set. But you want to be able, when it's a mystery, you want to be able to have a chance to solve it. And they removed really all the puzzles from the movie, because they were all puzzles that related to either 80s music, 80s videos games, or about the founder.
So you think if you reading the book, if you brought like your wealth of 80s pop culture knowledge, you would possibly be able to solve the riddles or whatever, the puzzles.
If you were the super mega geek, this might be something. But it was fun hearing in all this these games names, you know what I mean? It's fun to hear. Like, when was the last time you remember Joust? I mean, how shitty was that?
Love Joust. If you don't remember Joust, you literally are a knight of some sort that climbed on the back of an ostrich.
Yes.
And fly around on ostriches don't fly, by the way, but a flying ostrich with a lance, like medieval times. And you were supposed to skewer your opponent who's also on a flying ostrich with a lance before they skewer you. That's Joust.
Right. So
Good times.
that's his first thing he had to complete. He had to go inside this like tomb, this dungeon, this cavern that's right out of a D&D manual. And then what do you call a zombie but in D&D? It has like a crazy name.
You might call him a zombie or a ghoul or something along those lines. I don't know.
They called it
Depends.
they called it something more D&D.
A white.
No, damn you.
There's all sorts of stuff. It's hard.
Anyway, that's who he's battling with. He had to give the password, and then he battles the ancient king in Joust to earn the key, and then has to go and recite all the words to the Matthew Broderick movie, War Games.
War Games. Well, and that's the other thing. Somebody, like we said, we love the movie The Shining. I felt the representation of this movie showing The Shining was insulting. I did not like the it made like no sense. You know what I mean? It was like suddenly the naked woman's like got a knife and an axe and is chasing people around, and it was like, what is this movie? Then there's like weird zombies dancing around, floating in space in the ballroom. It was like stuff that made no sense. It was ridiculous.
No.
Very offensive.
And I will tell you where I am in the book right now. He's just found the Jade Key. So there was no Shining references as of yet. Yeah,
there's none. There is no Shining references.
Yeah. The whole swimming
in the book,
and the whole swimming in a hallway of blood. I was like, this is boring.
Right. It was almost like,
Kevin, this is just a shit fest. We're just like, this is just terrible.
Well, and I didn't hate it. I think you hated it more than I did. I didn't hate it. I found it very disappointing. I mean, there was a scene where he's like trying to decide, oh, should I dress up as Duran Duran to go on this date, or should I dress up like Buckaroo Banzai?
Oh,
that should have been my thing.
That should have been you, brother. You love the Buckaroo Banzai.
Absolutely, but I found it pandering.
And he didn't look like Buckaroo Banzai.
Really didn't. Very upsetting. Shall we go behind the scenes?
Let's hurry up and get behind the scenes, because there was nothing in front of the scenes.
That's what you're telling me. Here we go, behind the scenes. In an interview, Steven Spielberg said this was the third most difficult movie he made in his career. Do you know what the first two were?
Those other two shitty movies you just mentioned?
Yes. No, it was, number one is Jaws.
Yes.
Number two is Saving Private Ryan.
And yet, I never saw Saving Private Ryan, of course, because my phobia of war movies. But the other ones,
your phobia.
I did. I watched this movie about World War I called "It Came Upon a Midnight Clear," and I've been traumatized ever since. About the Christmas peace, and then they all killed each other, and I was like, I've been traumatized ever since.
What was the movie from the 70s?
All's Quiet
where
on the
was
Western
the guy?
Front?
No. Well, that's not from the 70s. Where the guy goes to war and he comes back and he has no arms or legs and like no face and has no sight or sound. He can't hear anything. He can't see anything. And he's in the hospital, like all bandaged up, and can't interact with the world around him. And the movie ends with him kind of tapping. I don't know how he's tapping Morse code. And they figure out what he's saying, and he's saying, "Kill me."
Oh my God, that's the most upsetting thing. This is why I don't watch war movies. That's worse than any zombie movie or anything else. Yeah, war.
Besides the obvious,
I'd rather have plague,
don't do it,
and I'd rather have zombies. The man's inhumanity of man is far more terrifying than any vampire scratching at my window.
That is sad but true. The cars that are in the race at the beginning of the movie, you see Bigfoot, you see the DeLorean from Back to the Future, you see the Batmobile, the A-Team van, V8 Interceptor from Mad Max, Christine, the Pork Chop Express from Big Trouble in Little China, and the Trans Am from Smokey and the Bandit, and the RV from Spaceballs.
I'm trying to remember. In the book, he does have a DeLorean, and then he loads it up with the voice of Knight Rider, so it's also Kit. And then he adds a couple of other things. And then his personal assistant in his apartment is Max Headroom.
Oh, Jesus. Can we talk about, okay, this reminded me. There's the grand reveal, because in the movie, from time to time, Parzival will go to the like archives or whatever.
Right.
And there's kind of the robot curator who kind of helps him. And it's revealed that that is secretly Ogden Morrow, who's been that character the whole time, which makes absolutely no sense. So you're a real person who's hanging out in the archives 24/7 in case somebody comes and asks for help.
Well, he got nothing else to
Does that
do.
make any goddamn sense?
First of all, there's no
Well,
archives in the book. They just refer to the almanac, which is a physical book. And Ogden Morrow's just hanging out, being his badass hippie self, living up in Oregon.
Oh, there was one other thing that I just remembered. The crazy suits that they wear, where it's like now you can feel the things that are going on. There's only one use for that that would be any reason why somebody would have it. X-rated reasons.
Of course.
You wouldn't want that if you're going into battle or you're fighting somebody.
Why would you?
Because you don't want to really feel things.
What? You don't want that. Absolutely.
Absolutely not.
And quite frankly, they came. I remember at least 10 years ago, they invented this like vibrating britches with a remote control that you could be across the world and controlling it. That already exists. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars
I'm sure.
for that. Between that and your Japanese
it's like
sex
literally,
robot.
He's able to like fight Nolan Sorrento by kicking him in the balls in the virtual world, and it really hurts him in the real world.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. You wouldn't want that. What is there, like a squisher? Is there a grabber in the crotch area that just squishes you when somebody kicks you? I wouldn't want that.
In the book, they talk about people getting married that have never met.
So right, because they live their whole lives in the virtual world.
Exactly.
And now they have kind of a message at the end where it's like after winning, they say, hey, we're closing the Oasis Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that in those days, you're faced with the bleakness of your real lives.
Isn't that nice?
People living in the stacks. It's
no jobs.
Nice. There are nothing. You live in the stacks. Good luck. There's 10,000 references.
The problem of the fact that there was the air is bad, the water's poisoned, there are no jobs, and
they don't talk about that in the movie.
Oh.
They don't talk about the environment and things like that. That's all from the book. All we know is that in this one case, Parzival lives in a crappy neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's all we know from the movie, essentially. So who's to say?
Yeah, it's all kind of Road Warrior and stuff out there. But in the book, he has that same like junkyard. That's where he would go to school so he could have privacy. He had like a little heater that was like on a bicycle. He could crank up the batteries by using a little bicycle, and he would hide in the junkyard in that van. And that's where he would go to school. That's where he would be for most of the day. And the old lady, when he climbed down the stacks that was watering her plants, she was kind of like a mother figure to him. She was always kind. She always had a bowl of soup or something for him. So that was the real tragedy when the Sixers blew up his home because he wouldn't give them the secrets.
Well, and I guess what did they say? That they justified the explosion in the stacks by saying it was like a meth lab exploding in the book. But in the movie, they don't say anything.
Yeah.
They're just like, whatever. Yeah. We own a tech company. We could just run with impunity.
Yeah.
All over the world.
Because by the end, they would just
kill people.
They would just show up. And he was talking about, I don't think this was in the movie, but the real world elections and the Oasis elections were happening at the same time, and everybody only cared about the Oasis because that's what affected their lives the most. The elections and the Oasis. As far as president and all that, that didn't matter because nothing was ever going to change.
This is a very depressing novel,
It's a
by the way.
it's a post-apocalyptic world, friend. His parents were drug
Steven
addicts.
Spielberg. They're blowing up their meth lab. Steven Spielberg is referenced along with some of his movies in the source novel. Spielberg has stated that he would remove these references, although some, like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park and the alien ship from War of the Worlds 2005, do appear.
And there's a lot of Star Wars references in the book too, of course. He has
there's a bunch.
After he won the first key, he got all this endorsement deals because he had no place to live.
Right.
So he has his own version of the Millennium Falcon.
I think that's about it. Should we talk about the cast?
Lay it on. Well, there's the chick from The Secret of Rowan Inish. If you haven't seen that, kiddo, you'll see that.
That's all we need to know, basically. Parzival is played by an actor named Ty Sheridan. You know him from Mud with Matthew McConaughey.
No.
He was in a lot of the X-Men movies. He played Cyclops. He was in X-Men Apocalypse. He was in X-Men Dark Phoenix. All sorts of good stuff.
Oh, I didn't see those. I stopped watching the X-Men by then.
Yeah, they aren't. When he joined the cast,
yeah,
he was fine.
He was late in the game.
A little late in the game, you're telling me. Olivia Cook played Artemis/Samantha. You know her from Ready Player One, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl from 2015.
Okay.
You know, don't you?
I've heard of it.
Sound of Metal. Oh, she was in Sound of Metal. Did you see Sound of Metal about the drummer who's going deaf? It was nominated for Best Picture a couple years ago.
No, that sounds sad. I'm not going to watch that.
Okay. She was in something called Thoroughbred. You know it, don't you?
Nope.
Who
played IROC?
That was T.J. Miller.
Why do I?
TJ, I don't even have to look that up. T.J. Miller's a comedian who's kind of been canceled lately for some allegations, but you know him from Silicon Valley. Did you ever watch that show?
That's it. I saw it a couple times. I was not into it, but I still managed to watch a season of it.
He was in Cloverfield. He was in Big Hero 6. He was in the Deadpool movies.
Yeah, I have a perfect picture of his face. He has the curly blonde hair or whatever.
Yes. Ben Mendelsohn played Nolan Sorrento. You know him from Rogue One. He was in The Dark Knight, Ready Player One. He was in Captain Marvel. If you care, he plays an alien in a lot of these things. He's Australian.
Aren't they all?
It's been a ton of stuff. Yeah. Lena Waithe played H, or Helen.
Oh.
You know her from
Master of None. I couldn't figure out. I loved her in Master of None, if you haven't seen that. Because he got canceled too, but now he's back.
Well, his cancellation seemed kind of specious, honestly. It was like he had a bad date, essentially.
That's what it sounded like. He tried to kiss me. I was not into it. Cancel.
Right. That's not the same thing as TJ Miller.
No.
By the by. I think that's all. I mean, sorry. There's a couple others. Simon Pegg. He played Ogden
right over
Morrow.
Simon Pegg. We love Simon Pegg. Which
World's
reminds
End, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, Star Trek.
We never did Shaun of the Dead.
We haven't. Add it to the list.
Oh, I got quite a list.
Mark Rylance played Anorak or Halliday. You know him from Bridge of Spies, The BFG, Dunkirk, Trial of the Chicago 7.
I did see that.
He was like their attorney.
Okay.
So there you go. Good times. Let's talk about our ratings, shall we?
Lay it on me, brother. What did Rex Reed say?
Rex Reed did not talk about this movie, sadly. Ready Player One currently has a 72% certified fresh. The audience gave it 77.
The audience of 14-year-olds. Let me just say that.
They love it. Let me see what the top critics have to say. about Ready Player One. Oh, good. I love it when I click the wrong thing.
Ah,
God damn it.
top critic said this blows. Go read the book.
Okay, top critics. Let's try this again. This is all getting edited out. Let's go. Okay. Top critics. Let's see if I find someone that I recognize. There's a bunch. Like basically everybody reviewed it. Leonard Maltin. Fans of Ernest Cline's book are already grumbling about the changes and omissions in this expansive, expensive adaptation.
Yep.
I enjoyed the film more than I expected to, but felt that it went on too long and squandered its potential in the process. Don't disagree.
Well, he's a dum-dum. To quote A Night at the Museum, dum-dum gum gum.
Write that down. Peter Travers from the Rolling Stone gave it 3 out of 4.
What?
For those looking for Ready Player One to condemn the Digiverse as a destructive... For those looking for Ready Player One to condemn the Digiverse as a destructive force against human connection, find another movie. Spielberg's mind-bending joyride won't quit even when the head-spinning spectacle hits sensory overload. Game on. Is that helpful?
These people, honestly, even if they hate it, it sounds like they love it.
Well, they have a style of writing that's very creative. What is your rating?
Oh my God. My rating is 1. Call the Sixers, blow up my fucking stacks, because I am never watching this movie again. I'm not saying
that is madness.
I'm not saying it's the worst movie ever, but
I think that's what you are saying.
Not ever. There are definitely worse movies. But what I'm saying is I don't need to watch it again. I found it kind of boring and long.
Yeah, I'm going to give it 2.5 out of 5. That's something hilarious I was going to say, and it jumped right out of my brain. Ladies and gentlemen, you're just going to have to take my word for it. If you heard what I was going to say, you'd be laughing right
Our
now.
mother
2 out of 5.
Our mother says if you can't remember it, it must have been a lie.
That must be it. It is fine. Disappointing. And I'll say again, I found it aggressively pandering to people who like 80s pop culture.
Well,
I mean,
that's very Spielbergo. So, I mean, he's always aggressively manipulative, in all his emotional stuff. So I'm not surprised that you say that. And don't get me wrong, the first Indiana Jones, amazing. There are parts of Jaws that are iconic.
This is true. Absolutely.
This is not one of those situations.
Well, he's definitely Spielberg, who I'll go to the mat for. There have been many films in his oeuvre that just didn't do it for me.
El Flapo.
And this sadly is one of them.
El Flapo.
War Horse. Did you ever see War Horse?
No.
Same.
That's terrible.
Exactly. It's about a horse. Anywho.
You know what?
So,
thank you very much. Who wants to watch a goddamn movie? When I was 12, I read books about horses. When I was 11.
Yes.
There were thousands of books because girls like horses. That's why there was such a thing as My Pretty Pony. My Pretty Pony. Read about horses, kitties, and stuff like that.
My Pretty Pony.
I couldn't give a damn about movies about fucking racehorses. And yet, people keep doing it. What the hell?
They keep doing it.
What the hell?
So, thank you very much. Go to our page on Twitter at TPodcastTWDie. Go to our page on Facebook at The Podcast That Wouldn't Die. Aaron, Instagram, what's going on?
In fact, I am on Instagram. In fact, while you were just talking a few minutes ago, I was on Instagram at that moment.
That's upsetting to me. That's a personal attack.
Attack. Yes, I am on Instagram. I'm glad that you
are. We on Instagram? Are we on Instagram? Damn it.
Well, We are the podcast that wouldn't die. We are, in fact, on Instagram with that same name. Is that what you were asking?
Good times. That's what I was looking for. You can also email us at the podcast that wouldn't die at Gmail.
That's one word, kids.
That is true. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere the finer podcasts are available. So don't forget to like, share, review, and rate, if you will.
If you will.
Aaron, I hear that you are also on Instagram. What's your personal Instagram account now?
My personal Instagram account is The Cult of Aaron. Yes, join my cult. I also have an interesting second Instagram account called Don't Feed the Pigeon. Check it out.
And you have another Instagram account called All Eastern European and Far East Characters. Send me all of your pornographic pictures, if I remember correctly.
That is our main account, actually. Although I have no pornographic videos. And I love how aggressive they are. I ignore, like, over the course of the day, I got the same video 5 times. I've ignored you, I've ignored you, I've ignored you. And he just kept sending it.
That's called good salesmanship. Don't take no for an answer.
That's
no
right.
is just almost a yes.
What about us?
Next week, we'll be reviewing the vampire classic, Lost Boys, with Corey Haim, Jason Patrick, Kiefer Sutherland, Jamie Gertz. It's an all-star cast, for goodness sake.
You always love Jamie
Corey
Gertz.
Feldman.
Of course.
So check that out. Check it out. You can watch it. Do you have Showtime? If you have the Showtime app, you can watch it for free. How's that grab you?
Otherwise, screw you. Is that what it is?
Otherwise, you might have to be a little more creative. Maybe visit your local library.
You gotta go on the YouTube where it's like you have to like watch 15-minute segments because someone has posted it in 15-minute pieces.
Yep.
I think I had to watch an Argento movie that way once with like crackling lines recorded off of someone's VHS or bootleg copy.
That's how we watched. And that's how we watched Alligator. Although now Alligator is available in 4K. You're welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
That's because of us. I think you should probably
because of us.
Exactly. I think if you look, was probably back on.
That might not be on 4K, I'm sad to say. So send us your thoughts, feelings, comments, favorite scenes, favorite quotes, and maybe we'll talk about it on the show. Good times.
Well,
thank you very much.
I just wanted to say something to our listeners. If I was listening, I brought this up to you, Kevin. I was listening to You Must Remember This podcast about old Hollywood, Katrina Longworth, who's amazing. So her season is on Sex in the 80s. And this last episode covered not only the birds, but body double. It was the episode was on Vioporn. I think you guys should check it out because these are all the good movies that we have reviewed. Check it out, kids.
I have to say, I will still go to the mat for Body Double. I think it is a good time. It is ridiculous, make no mistake, but it's a good time.
She apparently liked it. I was the one who was like, "What the F?"
That is the appropriate reaction. So, thank you very much, and be well.
Take care, people.